Good morning, everyone. Welcome to this session. My name is Huixia Judy Wang. I'm professor of statistics at George Washington University in Washington, D.C. of the United States. Today, we are very happy to have three speakers to speak in this session. The session is titled Toward Better Collection and Analysis of Data in Healthcare Applications. So we're going to have three distinguished speakers. And the first speaker is Professor Tia-Mei Zhang from Beijing Institute of Geriatrics National Health Commission. And our second speaker will be Wei Ma from Renmin University of China. And our last speaker is Professor Feifang Hu, my colleague at George Washington University. And after each speaker is going to speak for about 15 minutes. Then after that, we're going to open for floor discussion. So first of all, let's welcome our first speaker, Professor Zhang. I think you can use this one, or which one do you prefer? Yeah.
Good morning, everyone. First, I would like to thank the invitation of conference and focus on the topic of our section. I would like to share thinking and experience about data management based on our recent cohort study. When we mention data, according to the definition, it is a basic element or raw material of objective things. We talk about high quality or good data. We should talk about some feature like integrity, uniformity, validity, and so on and so on. But all the features cannot separate from the aim of study. 4 years ago, we start a cohort study, a Chinese longitude study for health aging. We wish to observe nature of aging. We wish to know what happens in health status during the life course. And we hope all the funding can support the progress of health aging in China. That means we need a lot of data, huge of data, the data as better as possible. But how we can get it? In our opinion, we don't think, and today I will not talk too much about technical issue. The most important thing we think is the way and the principle of thinking about the study. We think at the very early beginning, we ask ourselves why we need to deal in such kind of a study and what we should know about health and which kind of a theory or previous work we would take as reference. We combine all these questions together and think and ask ourselves several times and to find the answer step by step. For example, we are much attention put on the health status, especially functional ability. So first question, we should to know what is the definition and domains about health. We took the health concept offered by WHO. We divided the three major parts into different domain and find the represent indicator for each domain and to use it to do our data collection. We especially concerning about functionality. So we took the 5 subdomains of intrinsic capacity as a key data collection. And based on such kind of thinking and preparation, we made a list of data collection with more than 500 items. At the beginning, we thought maybe that's enough, but finally we find some weak point. I will talk a little bit later. And in the data analysis, we keep the same principle and way of thinking. As we know, health aging is the consensus to incorporate population aging all over the world. But the health status declined by age, that's big challenge. And generally, you can draw a line, like showing slides, to show the functional decline, but we wish to know what is the exactly situation. And also, theoretically, people can be divided into different groups by the functional ability, such as high and stable capacity, decline capacity, and the significant loss of capacity. But in practice, how we can tell them one by one from the population. And also, we wish to get proper information about proper time period to do the intervention for each people with the identified capacity. So we need a lot of information from our data analysis. From our data analysis, we do find functional decline by age. In all the functions, we observe decline by age, and we can find the cut point and the age window of decline in the intrinsic capacity. When we take age into only one factor into account, we can find such kind of a linear relation between functional decline and age. But when we take more impact factor into account, we can find such kind of a non-linear relation in psychology health. And the change of emotion regulation ability by aging and the probability between emotion regulation ability and negative emotion expression is a linear relation by age. So that means if you ask more, the information you get more. And also we establish such kind of a technique to assess the intrinsic capacity. We can calculate the intrinsic capacity score for each person and tell them from the population and prepare the percentage of each group in the population by age. But all the things are not going very smoothly. We face the challenge when we wish to know more about functional ability. Besides the intrinsic capacity, which is a function dealing with the normal daily life, there are physical reserve and physical resilience, which the body function when they face the stress and give some response, such as you get injury or disease. But how to measure stress and the response? Unfortunately, we cannot get suitable enough data to do such kind of to get such kind of information. That means we need to go back to the population and find more data to give a suitable answer. So from data analysis step by step, we can understand some standard of health. We can know some process of health, and also we can find the relationship between the health, between the life behavior with some impact factor. And based on such kind of data analysis, We have already established technique for assessment of health status, including tracing capacity. We develop an atlas of physical health by aging and prepare several reports in Chinese health status. The work is still in the continue. We wish from the raw material, that's our data, to get information and to generate knowledge and insight health status, and finally we can have impact factor in decision making, even policy making. And one of the important information we get from our work is the important thing is the way and principle of thinking about your research work. The thinking of researcher play an important role in the study, even we have already in the time of ChatGPT. All the right of choice and the decision still in our hands. So finally, I would like to thank all the participants in our work. That's a big teamwork. And also thanks the grant support from Ministry of Science and Technology. And finally, thank you all for your attention.
Thank you, Professor Zhang. We are right on time, and actually we have several minutes extra. That if there are any questions from the audience, and we can, welcome to ask your question. Even though we still have a floor discussion at the end of the session. So, any questions? Yep.
Thank you very much for that presentation. It's interesting that in England, where we'll be talking tomorrow about electronic health records, we have for the last 10 or 15 years in family practice been screening people for what we call frailty. That's not quite as detailed as this. And what's interesting to me is that medical students and doctors are used to making specific diagnosis of infections and heart disease. They find it very difficult to just diagnose frailty. But we're sort of getting there quite slowly. And we're beginning to try and integrate medical and social care services, sharing information. So once we're getting a much better demographic idea of who's frail in the United Kingdom. The other thing I wanted to say as a retired family doctor is that frailty seems to accelerate as people get older, but people don't want to change their environment around themselves very quickly. And as a family doctor, I used to spend quite a lot of time asking the family to accelerate actually putting changes into the household or into the house. And that's quite difficult for people. People don't want to change when they get older, but they are changing. And I think it's sometimes like the reverse of being a child. A child very quickly becomes more and more competent. And then when you get to the end of life, it goes the other way. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the comment. Any other comments or questions?
So for this data set, so you basically collect from like a different province and from through different hospital, or about the data?
Yes, about the data sets, it's exactly collected from all of China. I thought the details about data collection and analysis maybe could be introduced by Professor Ma Wei. he is the next speaker. You'll get all the detail, but in my part, I only want to share the thinking and experience.
Yeah, actually, I have a related question about the data because you show the age between 20 to like 80, and you mentioned this is a longitudinal study. So I wonder how long have you been collecting the data?
Especially during the last 4 years, you know what we meet in such kind of work. So it cost about 3 years almost.
Oh, 3 years.
Yeah,
And
for
you're
the,
still
for the baseline.
okay, but you're still
Yeah,
collecting data
we wish to
continuously.
still continue and to follow up,
Mm-hmm.
and so we can more answer about what we're interested in.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? All right, if not, let's thank Professor Zhang once again. So our second speaker is Professor Wei Ma from Renmin University.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Weima from Renmin University. Today, I'm very happy to share some of our recent work about youth data for aging studies. In particular, I will talk about the health big data analytics and sharing platform we built. It's actually part of the big project led by Professor Zhang. So my part will be providing more details and will be a little bit technical. Okay, I will talk about a little bit about background and our growth, followed by the progress and achievements we have made. Population aging is a global issue. Here's some numbers. So by 2050, 1 in 6 people in the world will be aged over 65. The number is just 1 in 11 back in 2019. And the aging speed is much faster than in the past. All countries face challenges brought by aging, and China is no exception. According to National Health Commission of China, by 2035, 90% of population will be aged over 60. That means China is expected to become a super aged society. To explore health and aging trends in China, in 2019, the Ministry of Science and Technology of China initiated a large cohort study, which Professor Zhang just gave a very nice introduction. This large study is a team effort and involves people with various backgrounds, such as aging researchers, physicians, biologists, economists, and of course, statisticians and data scientists. In fact, data collection and analysis play very important roles in this study, provide technical support for scientific discovery, and this is achieved in part by building up a big data platform. When building the big data platform, we have 3 goals in mind. The very first step is creating an aging database that contains data collected from all over the country. After that, we build a data analytics and sharing platform. The platform provides data visualization and analysis tools to study health conditions and risk factors. Because the whole study is a large collaboration work, the platform also makes sure the data can be safely stored and shared. Based on the health database and the platform, the ultimate goal is to extract useful information from the data. For example, to help us to understand and study aging trends in China. In this part, we are particularly interested in 2 things, which are intrinsic capacity assessment and the risk factor identification, and we'll give more details later. Next, I'll talk about some progress we have made. First, I've introduced the database and big data platform, as well as the data visualization and analysis tools we have used in the study. Then I will briefly talk about the construction of the composite score, which can help us to assess a person's intrinsic capacity and classify the population based on their health status. Finally, if time permits, I will show how the composite score is validated and some of its applications. For the health database, the study collects data from 7 geographical regions and 9 hospitals in China. That answers Professor Hu's question. Health inhabitants aged between 25 and 90 were enrolled. We have collected a large amount of data, in total 13 categories of measurements. This includes various health measurement variables, such as functional capacity, disease, physical performance, and lab tests. Also include many health-related factors, such as lifestyle, socioeconomic status, and living conditions. So far, for the baseline data, we have collected over 25,000 participants and over 500 measurements. We also performed follow-up for the elderly participants who have been enrolled for more than 1 year in the study, about over 7,000 participants so far. For the follow-up data, we mainly focus on newly diagnosed diseases, ability loss, and death. We are still working on collecting more follow-up data and merge baseline data and follow-up data to support longitudinal data analysis. Because raw data are usually multi-source and heterogeneous, we have taken various measures to clean and process data. This is to ensure that the data quality is well controlled and can support the analysis need. The database is well organized and ensures that data is safely stored and shared. On the client side, the users being assigned permissions can then submit, preview, or download data. While on the management side, the system adopts hierarchical permission system. We also use some techniques such as watermark embedding and data masking to ensure data security and privacy. The big data platform is fully functional and has been carefully designed to have several different modules. The data analytics module deployed various visualization tools and statistical methods, some of which will be discussed shortly. In the system toolbox, database API is provided so users can conduct more customized analysis. The platform also comes with a real-time dashboard and has features to ensure the system is easily maintained and extended. This page summarizes some data analysis tools deployed in the platform that are commonly used for aging studies. The goal of data visualization is to translate complex information into clear forms, and this can help researchers to identify some patterns in the data. Due to time limit, I will not cover all the figures available in the platform and their roles in the aging studies, but these figures give us some valuable information about aging trend. Essentially, most functional capacities decline with age, but declining trend are heterogeneous in terms of declining rate, pattern, and time happening. It is also observed that health management differs across different age and sex groups. Almost statistical tests have been run to confirm the patterns suggested by data visualizations. For example, difference analysis were run to confirm age and sex heterogeneity. One of the key parts in this project is to perform correlation analysis between variables of health measurements and related factors. The goal is to identify the factors that has an impact on the health. In this part, we calculate correlation coefficients according to different variable types and draw correlation coefficient heat maps and network diagrams. We also do formal modeling, such as analysis variance, to assess their statistical significance. Change point analysis was also conducted. The goal is to identify the time point when the declining rate of a health measurement changed most dramatically. The implication of such analysis is to suggest optimal time point or time window for intervention. Another key question we want to address, or at least understand, is what is healthy aging? This is not an easy question because aging is a very complicated process and we are not paying attention to a specific disease but the overall health status of a person. For this, we develop a composite score to assess intrinsic capacity, which is a concept proposed by World Health Organization. The data from 5 domains include cognitive, vitality, sensory, locomotor, and psychological variables are used to create an overall score. Based on the score, we can divide population into 4 subgroups with different capacity levels, whose intrinsic capacity level is high, sufficient, moderate, or significant loss. We further develop another classification criteria for overall health status by considering both the composite score and other information available, such as diseases, obesity, and ability loss. The composite score is very well validated. We first validate score using various functional ability measurements, but not involved in the construction of the score, as well as variables of diseases and social economic factors. We found that people with higher composite score have better physical performances and lower rates for certain diseases. We also validate the composite score using the follow-up data. We found that the proposed composite score has close relationship with ability loss and death in the follow-up period, indicating the effectiveness of the composite score. So next, I want to highlight three achievements made during the project, all of which are related to data visualization and analysis. First, we have created a health atlas, which is essentially a book of figures. The book consists of over 70 figures on over 15 measurements, including different dimensions such as functional capacities, risk factors, disabilities, and diseases. This data provide basic information for health aging studies in China. Secondly, the intrinsic capacity assessment is shown to be a useful way to understand the health status of individuals and groups. The data analysis result suggests that the health status of Chinese population, especially the elderly population, is generally good, but there is still room for intervention and improvement. Lastly, we have identified a new risk factor, which is the lack of health consciousness by performing data analysis. It is found that to have important impacts on various functions and diseases. However, I want to note that such findings, and actually most of the results presented today, are based on the cross-sectional analysis of baseline data only, and should be confirmed with more follow-up data. That's actually one of our future work. As a summary, we have built a health database and a platform to support aging study. And this is showcased by intrinsic capacity assessment and risk factor identification. And that brings us to the end. I'd like to thank you for your time and attention today. Oh, sorry, I should. Okay, this is the summary page. So you can see a lot of keywords here at data. We provide valuable data source, build a data analytics and sharing platform, do data visualization and analysis. So if my presentation have a final take-home message, I would say proper data collection and analysis empower aging research. Okay. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Ma. Again, we still have a few minutes to answer any questions from audience or comments.
Hi, thanks for the presentation. Ooh, got a bit of echo, I think. So I'm a spatial data analyst, and I saw there were a few kind of spatial mentions there, like city living and place of residence. I was wondering if you could comment a bit more on if you've incorporated spatial analysis into the software, the platform. Thanks.
So thanks for the question. It's actually a very good point. We have collect data all over the country, so we do have some spatial view information, but so far we haven't done anything like that because we only focus on the whole data set. But in the future, I think that's a very good direction. We can incorporate spatial information to consider some different geographical factors into the analysis. Thanks for that.
It was very nice to see the work on health consciousness. we've done a lot of work on patient access to their own health records and health portals. And we tend to use the word health literacy. I don't know if it's the same as health consciousness, but we tend to think it's the same thing. And we were involved in building a medical centre along nearly 30 years ago, which was what we called a patient centre, the medical centre, where we had an information room and we gave people tools to actually begin to manage their own health. And of course, frailty and changes in physical ability are still not, I think, in our country seen as something that responsible of the citizens, but they think the health service will sort them out, which is a sort of an old-fashioned health consciousness. So I'm hoping that we can gradually change that so people become what we call internally controlled rather than externally controlled. And I think that's a really interesting area. So and of course it isn't just the elderly person, it's the family around them so that they take responsibility as well. Thank you.
Thanks for the comments. Glad to see that some of our analysis results are consistent. Thanks.
Thank you, Professor Ma. It's very interesting to see those database and the platform that you're building. So my question is the database open to public?
Not yet.
So are you planning to make it a public or only some summary of summary information?
I think there is a long-term plan to share the data to the public eventually, but at this time, because the data is very preliminary, as you said, all the results are preliminary, unpublished, and subject to change. We want to make sure everything is correct before giving this information to the public. And as for the individual level data, I think in the future we'll think about it to share it to our public.
Okay, so the interactive platform is still not public. It's
not only used for the study team.
Okay.
For the study team, there are over several hundred people
so
already. So we have to build a platform so people can work together. But in the future, we hope we can share the platform with other people. So, but there are several different levels. For example, you can share the tools. I think that's very possible. We can share some statistical methods developed during this study, and then share some analysis results, and finally share the data. But there should be expected in a long time.
Thank you, Professor Ma. Let's thank Professor Ma once again.
Thank you.
The last speaker of this session is Professor Feifang Hu, who is also my colleague from George Washington University in DC in the United States.
Okay, really thank Professor Zhang and Professor Ma for the talk. Really, that's based on one of the big projects in China. Yeah. That basically talk about like public health data, and what I will talk about is more like a clinical study. So it's data from clinical trial. Yeah, because this so the topic of my talk is data collection of clinical trials. So basically, it's the past, present, and the future. Because I think we really face some difficulty. Yeah, and so this work really based on my 30 years research in this area, yeah. So, and then really it's based on a lot of people, especially my PhD students. That I think I have graduated about more than 20 PhD students and also some co-authors, yeah. So it's really great to be here to talk about this, yeah. So I will talk about stuff from randomized control trial. So trials, this is still the standard way to do clinical trial. And then I talk about some of the studies we did adaptive data collection. So it's a little bit changed, yeah. And for the future, we basically face precision medicine. Everyone talk about precision medicine, but then how to collect the data for precision medicine really is a big issue, yeah. So then some of the little bit designs. And then I talk about a unified like data collection framework, how to really from statistical mathematical point of view, how to deal those type of data, and then conclusion of some of the futures. Yeah. So what I talk about is randomized control trials, and this is for the clinical trial and then drug development. It's not like Professor Zhang and Professor Ma talk about that, more like a public health data. Yeah. So that randomized control trial is basically is a form of scientific experiment used to control some of the confounding factors that will make sure that the comparison will be scientific. That's the reason. Yeah. So there are really three important aspects of the randomized control trial. The first one is we basically compare we have to compare a control group and then treatment group. We wanted to see the new drug is useful or not. So basically that's yeah. And then I think the second aspect is double-blinded. We need to both the participants don't know which treatment they really get, and also the researcher should not know. That's the double-blind. And also then the randomization to remove the bias. And this really take a human being for a long time to figure out this. Yeah. So we want to see the history. So the first reported clinical trial was conducted at 1747. That's the first clinical trial that basically is for comparison. They really wanted to compare different treatment, how they behave differently. But at that time, don't talk about blind and also randomization. And the first blind experiment was conducted in 1784. People really found if the participants know which treatment they get, they will behave very differently. So then they should not know. That's the 1784. And then I think it's early 19th century, then people found that not only the participants should not know the treatment, the researcher should not know too, otherwise they can bias the result. So so then you can see that 1907, that's the first clinical trial, really researchers don't know which treatment the participant get. So that you can see take a long time. And then we still have some selection bias. So how to remove the the selection bias is by using randomization. So then the randomization was first appears in psychology study, they randomize the people to different group. Instead of you have a power, the researcher have a power to choose who to go to the treatment. Yeah. So that's that. And then certainly in the early 20th century, in statistics, the two big names, Fisher and Renmin, that talk about randomization in different type of experiment, like in agriculture, in genetics, yeah. And then the first really published randomized control trial in medicine appears in 1948. So that's really the landmark for us, 1948. We really, as a human being, we start to do the right thing to prove that drug is useful or not useful, okay? And the advantages, certainly this is very important. The advantages to do the randomization, randomized control trial is really to remove the bias and some of the suspicious causality. Because the causality, if you don't do randomization trial, what you get maybe is not right. And certainly today we know that randomized control trial is a golden standard. So people talk about level 1 evidence is usually have to be obtained from a systematic review of all related randomized control trial. Then you got the level 1 evidence. That's from Australia, and then in US and in other places also at this moment basically is the golden standard. And you can see what's the randomized control trial bring to us. Really, in the past 1 century, you can see our health, medical care really revolutionized by the randomized control trial. Because all the drugs we got today basically are from this. And you can also see that the first two speakers talk about aging. You can see for the past 100 years, our aging, average aging, is from 50 to 70 something. This really is by through standardization. Basically, it's in the past 1 century, as a human being, we did a standardization. That's standardization is by using randomized control trial. Yeah, that's basically. But then if we move forward, we're looking for the future, you can see that a randomized control trial, really they have some disadvantages. The first one is ethical issue. Because we randomize the patient to treatment and control, and if the treatment is really doing better, much better, then we should have more patients in that treatment instead of equal allocation. So the trial itself may not be ethical. We will have example. And another one, certainly today, all the pharmaceutical companies basically face this issue, time and costing. That to develop a new drug is cost way, way too expensive. Now it's maybe billions of dollars have to be involved. Yeah. I will not go to the too much details. And people also found that always conflict of interest in dangerous. Because people who support the clinical trial usually are the companies. And they are the one, really, the one to make the drug to be efficacy. But then they sponsor this and then they do it by them. So you could be this is an issue. But then this issue would really, at this moment, it's difficult to really remove this. Yeah. And another one we can see really, it's always even we say that we use a randomized control study, randomized control clinical trials, they're always unbalanced patients' characteristics in different groups, in treatment and in the control group. Yeah. And many, many examples after we open the clinical trial, we can see the treatment group and the control group are different. And then the conclusion based on this kind of trial may be questionable. Yeah, that's really an issue. So then that's why we talk about the second part of the talk is really the adaptive data collection. So basically, it's in the past 30 years, that's one of my research area. Yeah. So the first one basically is try to solve the ethical issue. Yeah, so we say that the ethical issue. So this is one of the example, and this is a HIV transmission, a clinical trial published in the 1994 New England Journal of Medicine. So basically, it's we wanted to see the HIV transmission from the mom to the baby, newborn baby. And for this trial, they use the 50-50 randomization scheme. So that means half of the chance to the AZT treatment group, or half of them to the placebo group. Okay. So at the end of the trial, there are 239 women, mother in the treatment group. At the end of the trial, 20 HIV positive infants for the treatment group. And for the placebo group, there are 238 women and then 60 HIV positive. So you can see, in the placebo group, really it's 3 times of the risk. And this trial is really take 5 years. It's not like one day, we assign the patient to AZT and a placebo. It's really the patient come to the trial I think I'll take about 4 years to recruit the patient, and then follow up about 1 year to know that the infant is HIV positive or not. Yeah. So it's a 5 years clinical trial. So for this trial, really, gradually we have the evidence that like AZT, the treatment is useful or not. And we really get more and more information. The AZT is doing much better. So we should have more patients in the treatment group instead of the control group. Yeah. So if we use the design proposed by myself and Professor Zhang, like in the literature, then the AZT group should have 360 patients, and the placebo group should have 117 patients. So at the end of the trial, then only 60 infants will be HIV positive instead of 80. So you can see by changing the data collection, we can really save 20 of the infants from the HIV positive. So that's really the gain, yeah. So that's the ethic, yeah. So adaptive design really can do this. So that's yeah, I will not go too much about this, yeah. So really in the past 30 years, we did a lot of work, yeah. And the second thing I want to talk about is covariate adaptive randomization. And this certainly is for today's clinical trial, most of the trials are use covariate adaptive randomization. Basically, we went to the treatment group and the control group are comparable. Okay, so that's our purpose. Yeah. And you can see from the 1988 to 2008, about 20 years, there are over 50,000 covariate adaptive clinical trials being reported. Yeah. And we also proposed many of the design. Here I just mentioned one of the design that we proposed in the 2012 in the statistics in medicine. We proposed a generalized multi-dimensional dynamic allocation method. And this method really for the past 10 years had been used for over like 1,800 clinical trials use this technique. Yeah. And then you can see that doing much better than the original type of that, yeah. And talk about for the future, as I said, precision medicine. Why we are interested in precision medicine? One of the things is that we found that standardization certainly is really good for the first step, but then humans are different. We are different. So then we should, based on the patient's characteristic, choose the best treatment for them. That's the precision medicine. Yeah. So as I said, for the past 100 years, we basically did standardization. But then the next step, we should take the count the patient, we are different. And then we should get the suitable treatment for ourselves. Yeah. That's basically, yeah. And you can see this has been for the past 20 years, it's the keywords in the medical research. But even 20 years past, we made some progress, but then we still maybe the first step. So we need a new design, new approach, yeah. And why we need a precision medicine is really because we can find that for different person usually we have a predictive biomarker and a prognostic biomarker. Predictive biomarker usually have interaction with the patient, yeah, with the treatment, yeah. And to do this, really we found that for the past 10 years, we found a lot of predictive biomarkers, especially in cancer research. And that's really for the past several years, we see a lot of targeted medicine in cancer research. And that's more like a precision medicine, yeah. And for the past several years, we talk about some of the new design, like for example, basket design. Basically, people with different cancer, but that use a similar type of treatment. Yeah, that's basket. And then umbrella type of design, basically based on patients' different type of genetic type, we try different treatment for that. That's more like an umbrella. And then there is a platform design. Like it's not the same platform as Professor Ma. And here it's really like they have a very, very nice summary of this. But then when we have all those kind of different type of trial, what we really need is a unified mathematical framework of adaptive data collection. Yeah. And this is something like for the past several years, I like with some of the several of my PhD students, we really propose a unified framework and which can deal with all kinds of these kind of designs. Yeah. And this becomes really mess. I will not talk about this mess. But then if we look at the future data collection, I think personally, we really face many new challenges. Yeah. So the first challenge is really from standard treatment to precision treatment. Like we try to find a better treatment for different people. And then second one, I think, is we from status to dynamic. It's used to be clinical trial or statistical framework or static framework, but now we really need a dynamic framework. We need to move forward, yeah. And then from RTC, randomized control trials, to adaptive randomized control trials. That's my personal view, yeah. And from independence to dependence, because the data becomes more dependence data, yeah. And then if we only based on randomized control trials data, we would have trouble. We really need the real world data too, how to combine them. And we need to implement the new tools, like the GPT, iWatch, this kind of to collect the data. We need maybe in the future, that's my personal view, we need artificial randomized control trial instead of the real one. Because the artificial randomized trial can give us a lot of information. Because we can, in the future, we can really artificial person. That's, yeah. And certainly if we all doing this, how to do the data analysis. Yeah, that's about my talk. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Hu, for the presentation. Any questions from the audience or comments? I'll start with one. You mentioned, yeah. There's, okay.
Hello, Professor. My name is Gerald. I have 3 points I would like clarification on this model. And the first question is, as we are talking about precision medicine, the notion of it is it has not been regionally representative, in the sense that much of the data we are talking about is Eurocentric. It's from the Western perspective. What about the southern part of the continent? That is, some of the medication and some of the models are biased in terms of genetic makeup of African nations, Southern Asians, and Southern America. And the trials are based on the Western data.
Oh, I think this is a great question. Yeah, I think that means we really need to run clinical trial in different regions, not just in Western or in China, yeah, in Asia. We really need to do, yeah.
And that's what we experienced during the COVID trials with the vaccine.
Yeah, but at this moment, I think it still have some difficulty, but this is the future, yeah. We have to really take care of everyone. And but then who will pay that?
So it's about the issue of cost.
Yeah, issue of cost is an issue, yeah.
Then that makes the medicine and the whole trial biased and not representative for the group of population. The other issue is standardization and the fidelity of data. My query is, when the standardization is done by entities like the FDA, you have alluded in your presentation, or other WHO, yet we are having much of the medical trials coming even from the global south. Currently, we have an issue with the diabetic drugs from Cuba, which has not been allowed in USA, yet the clinical trials done in Cuba were effective. So how then do we overcome the issue of standardization by the biased institution? And the other thing, how do we ensure the fidelity of such data can be used objectively for the others and not for the pharmaceutical entities, which by the end of the day, they propagate their own agenda of profit maximization?
Yeah, I think this question, maybe I'm not the right person to answer this, but then I can comment, yeah. I think like maybe World Health Organization should involve that, because if it's just by the pharmaceutical company, certainly for them, they need to make money. Yeah, that's, yeah. And then they have to like consider the cost and the yeah, cost effect, yeah.
And the last query, I had three. The last query is, in terms of novel or new drugs, new scientists are coming with new ways in the lab, they're coming up with new drugs, but there's bias towards drugs which have perceived outcome within either the scholarly or researchers. How do you address the issue of LCT in novel new drugs that even the researcher and the scholars don't have perceived outcome? Because you have had in issues whereby the outcome is perceived and is shared, then the trials are accepted. But in cases whereby the trials are individual based on a single professor of research outcome or lab test, then that is not happening. So how do you overcome that process? Thank you.
Thank you for the question. I don't think I can answer these questions. Thank you, yeah.
Thank you for the very interesting discussion and the question. We still have a couple of minutes. If you have any questions, either to Professor Hu or the previous two speakers, please raise your hand.
I think just a couple of points. As a family doctor in England, and doing one's best to give people the most appropriate treatment or interventions, and not being a statistician. I mean, it's lovely to see what you've been saying and see how things have moved on. It's one of the issues you have in family medicine is actually trying to keep up to speed. And so it's nice to see what's been happening, these trials, that you actually begin to have less people in the trial if it's been shown it to be so successful. That's really quite exciting. The other rather silly little point, I'm sorry, was somebody had gone through research to show that 50,000 pieces of research had been a certain type of research. I can't remember what type of research it was, but how did they do that? I mean, that sounds like a huge job. They must have gone through hundreds of thousands of trials.
Oh, yes, I think that what the data I have there is like for about 20 years, they reported 50,000 of the clinical trials. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's really.
I just wonder how you do it.
No, it's reported through all the medical journals, yes. And we didn't do it. Yeah, but then you can think how much it cost. Yeah, each of the clinical trials is really expensive.
Yeah. No, it's good. Yeah. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you. Let's thank all the three speakers once again for the very stimulating presentations.
Thank you, for being here. I'm really happy to see you guys, because when I organized this session, I was thinking it's a really great opportunity for that project, and also for myself to introduce my research. Yeah.
Thank you, everyone, for coming to the session, and enjoy the rest of your day.